on. Let's go. Welcome to another episode of the OoruLabs podcast from Bengaluru. Ever complain how bad our cities are, how bad your commute is? You will get to hear from people who are working to solve these problems in their own way. This is your weekly soapbox for urban sustainability. So do not forget to like, subscribe, and share these videos. I am Satya Shankaran, and with me is Nirav Kodolikar. Before we introduce our guest of the day, do check out the newly launched website podcast.oorulabs.com. So we just put the entire video podcast library over there, and the profiles of the guests are also there for you to peruse and start browsing through and start looking at things. So let's get on with the show today. We have Amit Gupta, the co-founder and CEO of Yulu, one of India's earliest and largest shared mobility operator. I've known them for a long time since they started. He is a serial entrepreneur, having run hugely successful InMobi before founding Yulu. We are going to be speaking about micromobility with him today. Welcome to the show, Amit.
Thank you, Satya. Thank you once again, and thank you, Nirav, for having me here.
The micromobility market is fairly new, right? I mean, it's been in the talk since you were one of the few early guys who started in this whole space and started tackling this head on with the different form factors. Why don't you tell us what micromobility is in its definition? And the big question of the day, is micromobility going to survive in India?
So, very good question, Satya. If you look at our journey of moving people, especially in the urban context or in the cities, people were using their own vehicles, and we used to call automobile as a category. And then there was a worldview that this whole ownership should become mobility as a service. And that's how the mobility term was coined and became so powerful with with all the developments across technology, user behavior, etc. In fact, even large company call themselves a mobility company. They don't call them as an automobile company. But then we saw that how Uber, Ola, Didi lived across the globe. This phenomena of moving people in some car from point A to point B. So that started growing thanks to a lot of venture capital money and a lot of incentives given to driver and the rider both. People were having good time, and we almost took that as a great product market fit, where people were finding cheaper rides, driver were making a lot of money, and we started seeing a lot of movement from personal vehicles to so-called shared vehicle, which was nothing but the taxis running on car. Fast forward that, we basically found that those solutions did not solve our problem. First of all, the real service cost is much higher than what consumers were paying. Secondly, our cities are not designed. We don't have space. Forget India, where we have our own problem of very limited road infrastructure and the population. But even big cities where a lot of this business happens, London, New York, San Francisco, you name any big city, even they're clogged. So these cars are actually not replacing, they're not taking up the traffic. It's just basically it's the driver who's taking you along. Very quickly, people realize that this is not a sustainable solution for a problem of mobility. And the only way you can move millions of people is through public transportation, where you have a spine of metro, buses, carpool. I'm a big fan of that. So the idea is you have only limited amount of road space. How do you pack so many people in the same road space and move them efficiently? And this saves not only time but also precious money. Because if it is a group mobility, as you know, then you can have economy of scale and everyone wins. So consumers place less money, the operator makes money, and environment also wins. And everything is actually just very good. The key question is that public transportation cannot start from my home, unfortunately. So how do you get to the nearest station or your landing point? And same thing will happen at the destination. And that's where there was a need of some some mobility solution which can move people up for a short distance in an efficient manner. And that's why this whole word was coined in the name of micro mobility. And as per my understanding, micro is actually it's a small vehicle form factor is small for a choice, because if you're making it like a bus, yeah, bus cannot come from your home, so same problem. And also shorter distance. And almost like a concept was visualized where there's a, as I said, main spine, and you are able to come to those node points using a small vehicle, which are efficiently run. And to make things better, whole micro mobility was also kind of synonymous with electric mobility or sustainable mobility, or vehicles which are not running on, let's say, ice as an engine. So micromobility, if you ask my definition of mobility, as a surface which is using small form factors and running for short distances, and also running far more sustainably, the way things should be done for future. So this is how I look at micromobility. Now, question, what you've asked, the second question, how do I see future of micromobility in countries like India? I think it is not just a wish, it is actually a requirement, because our country cannot run on cars. Even I give everyone free car, we don't have road space. So answer has to be a great public transportation, very deeply integrated with micromobility to make it so frictionless. And this friction has to be removed, not just technologically, because that is an easy one, you can integrate two apps, but also from an infrastructure perspective. So if I'm, let's say, using an e-rickshaw in the context of, let's say, North India, then you need to provide some way where they can land, where riders can board, and they can also be dropped off efficiently. Or service like Yulu, where you need basically some small little parking space where people can drop the bike and someone else can pick it up. So this
Mm.
whole rotation of vehicles can happen. So technology, and also the infrastructure. And the last but not the least, there's also economy of scale. But because of better efficiency, customers also saves money, which means the single pricing bundle where user have access to everything what they need to. I think this probably is the winning formula in the context of our country.
No, I just wanted to pick up on this definition of micro mobility. And just to summarize, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So it's a micro form factor mobility that's primarily used for like first and last mile transport. Amit, would you say this definition is sort of held as a standard across the country? How do government sort of authorities look at this definition on, and does it make a difference if it is a small, if it has an electric component to it, or whether it's a pedal powered bicycle? Is it the same for the two?
My understanding is, and actually my rather recommendation is that we should not bind it with some if then else.
Sure.
In the context of the West, they are using kick scooter, so they can say, "Oh, micro mobility means that standing scooter running at this," but no, that form factor is not applicable to India. The kick scooter are not safe, first of all. Second thing, we don't have infrastructure to ride them. And I think we should take the thesis. The essence was that how do you make movement of people efficient? And I think the essence was that how do you make movement of people efficient for public transportation, their daily use case, and then I will not even limit it. Don't want to be limiting ourselves with first mile, last mile. It can be near mile in my definition. So short distance, short form factor, which can come very close to your place of origination and destination, and it is commercially viable. And even electric, by the way, is not the most requirement. What I was saying, that if you're building something for future, you also try to make things right. You should not go back 10 years ago when we were using petrol and diesels. So that was the essence. And to your point, no, there's no definition. There's no dictionary definition or anything like that. It is a thesis and the concept which each and every countries and cities for that matter can take. And they can say, for me, this is where the short distance commute actually can be used, and these are the form factors which one should use. And certainly is not limited to a two-wheeler. You can always use three-wheeler, for that matter, four-wheeler, as long as it is meeting the need to make this integrated mobility possible in a frictionless and efficient manner. I think everything is allowed and should be allowed from
Sure.
policy and thinking perspective.
If I understand right, micro is not the shape or the size, it is the distance, in your opinion, that
In my
determines
opinion,
what is
Satya,
micro.
also the shape also actually not shape, the size, and the reason
Mm.
is if it's too big, then we'll have the same problem of accessibility. So it's imagine that the school bus, if
Mm.
large school bus, one school bus has to take everyone from home, then the kid who is starting first is actually spending 1 hour versus a
Exactly.
small van which is taking fewer kids. So that is the element, because time, everyone values time, and no one wants to just be in the taxi, be in the bus to cover 1 to 2 kilometers for half an hour. That's not fun. So you break it down into smaller packs so that everyone can move efficiently. So that is the idea.
So Yeah, so it is the size of the vehicle that is one of the major constraint in major different parameters for defining
Immediate
micromobility.
if
Yeah,
someone wants to define it.
yeah, and you're saying it need not even be short distance. It could go long distance, is what you're saying. You could, for
No, I'm
example,
not saying it should be short distance because
excellent.
if it is a long distance, then your commercial viability will not be,
Mm,
will be true. So you have to optimize for distance and the viability part both. Because for long distance, you should use metro and bus if you have access to. So that is the idea. But I was
right.
saying that it should not be tagged with first mile, last mile. Because if I
Mm,
live in Gormangla and I need to go to BTM layout, yeah, there's no metro train yet. I should be able to use it. And even if there's a metro train, for me to go to metro train, enter, exit, like in Singapore, yeah, they have a good network of metro train, but sometimes it is not good because you just spend too much of time. So rather you can use a vehicle which is A to B and then you can be far, you can be more efficient. Let the metro train be used by people who are, running for long in the spine, the overall mobility spine. So let the space be there, and that's why if you look at like very popular cities which are like they have a downtown concept, let's say London.
mm,
So lot of people they cannot even enter. Like Mumbai, you cannot enter a local train, at even at Dadar. Impossible because the train coming from the back is fully flooded. So if someone has to go from a Worli station to let's say a little bit further, Prabhadevi or further, you cannot use it because everything is full. So let it be full, and you basically use a short distance commute without getting into the hassle of public transportation because it's already flooded with people. So that is basically the overall idea.
right. So coming to the last mile, it is also one of the categories that is widely a use case for micromobility as well, right? If you get
Yeah,
off a metro, it is not going to come. So last mile, while you say that it is not restricted to last mile, there is a market in last mile as well,
100%.
right?
Yeah, in fact, all the cities where there's a micro mobility service, they talk about almost 60 to 70% of the users coming from first mile, last mile,
Mm.
because that is one of the most obvious use case, and I think that's how it should be seen.
But what are the challenges in that? Because public transport adoption, other than a few large cities like Mumbai, there's a culture of public transport in some cities. Mumbai, for example, Chennai, Bangalore, but some others don't have that. If you take Delhi, it's there. Now it's coming up. So large cities now are embarking on the whole public transportation journey, but still there is, do you feel there is a hesitancy in adoption of micromobility service by passengers? We'll come to the actual physical infrastructure which makes it difficult for you to deploy seamlessly, but from a user's public transport user's perspective, do you see there is any mind share roadblock still with regards to things like micromobility? Looking at that vehicle, will they plonk themselves on it and go? What do you see?
Sure. So I think for something to happen, either there's a economic incentive or there's an incentive on the time,
Mm,
saving of the time, or there's an economic incentive or disincentive as a package. Now let's look at cities like New Delhi or Gurgaon in particular. So Gurgaon of late has one of the most wonderful road networks. They have developed underpasses and things like that, and people in general are reasonably affluent. So which means they can actually afford to have car. And if there's no road jam, they will say, okay, ditch. Who cares? Who will go to metro? I'll use my car from my home, park it at my office because they have given me free car parking. I will utilize that. But now imagine the time distance equation is changing when there's a lot of time taken. Everything is clocked. Then, okay, if I need to go to reach my office in 15-20 minutes, I should rather take metro versus my car, which will take 1 hour. Or cities, again, India, it's not there yet, but they have a congestion charges in the CBD area. So it is criminal, almost criminal. It's a lot of money required for you to go to uh, in Zone One in London, or for that matter in Singapore CBD area. I'm just referring these two cities where they have a very very good use case of public
yeah.
transportation. So if you are entering, you pay me like 200 rupees or 300 rupees. Then there's a disincentive, or parking is very expensive. But today, if there's no disincentive for me, I will never move to because my convenience is everything. So if and who are the people who are clogging the road? It's actually the personal car owners,
Mm,
unfortunately, and they don't care about money. only thing which will ding them is either by money or you disincentivizing them. So I think everything has to come in parallel in totality, where we promote policies, infrastructure related to ease of doing micromobility or using micromobility, but at the same time also have some disincentives for the users who are just using the mindlessly. There's just one person in one car. Yeah, you want to be in car, at least do carpool. So you are taking disproportionate amount of space, which is not right. And I think that's what is causing us a lot of stress and the issues. So, to summarize my point once again, both policy, which is promoting micromobility, and this is related to making things cheaper, accessible, and remove all of the frictions from technology and accessibility perspective. And at the same time, also have some tighter control. Imagine that even an odd rule Delhi implemented. If it is being implemented again, what do you think people are going to do? They're going to use public transportation because they have to reach office. Earlier, we did not have good public transportation. That's why when that even odd rule came, they had to take it back. But same thing happened in China, where they implemented this first time even and not. But before implementing that, they had created a backbone of public transportation because people have to go to office. They need to go to places of work. You cannot just say that, oh, because I have this problem, you don't go to work. No, you have to let the economic activity happen. Need to move people, to give them an option, and then start, tightening this nuts to make sure that people are not using, their personal vehicle without a strong reason.
So there is a strong case for disincentivization, but that's a strategic thing that the government needs to feel is politically convenient to push through. It is not
Yeah,
yet in the overturn window of popularity yet. It might take a little longer to get, but during that time, on the incentivization side, there are two people who can play: the market itself, offering monetary incentives, and whatever you can do from your side to make it more attractive, which obviously brings into play the actual public transport agencies. They are mostly government right now, right?
yeah,
And they, what is their prevailing mindset in integrating with micro? Because I have always maintained in my earlier podcast also that the last mile should be a part, it should be the responsibility of the mainline modes to say that, okay, here's the trunk and these are my limbs, and if I don't encourage or actively seek integration, I'm
yeah,
going to lose out because I'll never be able to compete with the private vehicle. Because then if you
true.
treat, because I've heard from many people, they're treating us as competition, they think we'll steal the traffic. How do you see, what would you much rather see the public transport agencies do? Because one of the things I've been
Yeah,
asking is, why don't you work with, what are those roadblocks? What do you think? What is your wish list for public transport agencies to start looking at you as an ally in completing the trip to the home, to the doorstep? Because you can't drop
yeah.
them somewhere in the middle of the boondocks and say, make your own way home. Nobody's going to come back to your thing.
Very, very good point, and I kind of tend to agree with you. What is the roadblock here? I think the answer for that, Satya, I think every city needs to think like an RBI or an PCI equivalent, where they should be enabler. They should create the rails, the common infrastructure, and then there should be a watchdog who is making sure that people are running the show as per the right playbook. So imagine, let's say Bangalore, we have a great or very very good network of metro now and increasing to many other areas, and there can be an integrated body who is overseas. So we do have DULT, as you know, but you actually need to now empower more, and I agree with you that you cannot as a government we should not try to do everything on their own, because there are services which can be run far more efficiently by private players because they can be far more nimble because of the market pressures and competition. Customer will win in terms of quality of the service, coverage, and the pricing. But if it is a monopoly body, yeah, you can give it cheaper, but the quality of service will not be there. The challenge is there's a lot of large section of society, for them cheap is not good enough. They also need a good service and they're willing to pay. But there's no option for me today to pay. For example, if I need to do public transportation, I want a little bit more comfortable space so that I can work, I can be productive for half an hour. But if there's nothing, I'll call an Uber and say, okay, please take me there. And I think this is what we need to solve. Where just like UPI, they said, okay, PhonePe, you can create your own UPI app. I have my Bhim app, by the way, but Phone Pay, Google Pay, Paytm, you all can create a good differentiated experience and let customer choose what they want. They're all riding on the same spine or the trunk or the common mobility framework. You can force them to be on a technology platform so that there's a real time availability information, accessibility information. And I think this is how we have to start thinking. I know there's a vision. We talk about common mobility card with the same vision. We talk about many things. But just because mobility is a state subject and it becomes a city subject, and then the complication in our world, in our country, so we're not able to move forward. The places where they have got an integrated body fully empowered, like TFL, or in Singapore, there's a body, LTA, which they have the responsibility, the vision to move people A to B. And how modes, etc., they basically are very open for that. I'm not saying that they have sorted the private public partnership part, but the thinking and the thesis has to be seen. I also must acknowledge that despite we having so much of operational challenges, I think our public transportation authority has been very forthcoming. Like Yulu, for example, has been getting cooperation from day one, from Delhi Metro, Bangalore Metro. They have given us spaces, and it did not happen by chance because they are really willing to do that, make it happen. But I think if we can do something on that front more, where there are a little bit more participant from public, as I said, private players who have been given a service quality, and you can put some mandates that if you don't, pass this, your service will be blacklisted. And then market forces will basically make sure that the customers are basically going to win. And once this friction is removed, then I see no reason. Like Mumbai, when I was living there for almost 3 years, many a times I will I will use a local train, especially when I'm going, further more than Bandra. I know it will be impossible for me to travel, and despite of all lot of inconvenience, I'll still go there. But imagine now the train ride of mine is more convenient with, let's say, metro doing a good job, then I'm not gonna drive. I don't like to. I'm far better productive, peaceful if I am basically in a public transportation moving very fast and in a convenient manner. So there's no reason for me to not use it. So I know it's kind of a visual thinking, looking at the demand and supply and other challenges we have as a country. But we have fixed infrastructure for highways. Our cities are now closer because of a very exceptionally good highway system. I think same amount of focus and rigor needs to happen in the intracity as well. It is possible, but requires a little bit more grit, maybe a little bit more top-down approach push, where some of these things can be pushed, enforced. The cities are not taking short-term decisions, sometime in the name of not thinking a section of society and things like that. Because people are worried, our political system is ensuring that the Janta is the king. Sometimes the Janta is the king, forces them to take a wrong decision, which is populist in nature, so they don't want to do that. But sometimes you still have to fix things. The section of society will not be happy. Like in Paris, the new mayor who came, she basically blocked one car lane altogether. They took off 10,000 car parking. A section of society was very unhappy. But whatever. Same thing happening in London. So the mayor is taking away a lot of car spaces, giving it to the small form factors so that more people can move faster and more efficient.
So, Amit, moving away a little bit from the public transit side of things, for the viewers listening and watching, back in 2019, Amit was very kind in helping me with my undergrad thesis on the barriers to the implementation of public bicycle sharing in the city of Bangalore. So, Amit, I have to ask, and as an avid cyclist myself, I see that Yulu has pivoted towards electric micro mobility in the past few years. Is there any particular reason that the bicycle, as a mode of transit for first and last mile mobility, did not take off? And could you give us a few learnings from that exercise?
So, Nirav, not just so you are right. I think as a bicycle, or I would say pedal, or the human-driven pedal cycle, as the format of mobility uh, in Indian cities, that was we found it very difficult to execute. Not just
Sure.
India, but also I look at countries like Japan, even European countries, America, most of the places for the purpose of short commute, the bicycle, the regular bicycle actually has not worked well. And the reasons are as follows. First of all, and by the way, when I'm making these statements, I'm making this statement for shared bicycles. I'm not talking about bicycles
Sure.
which you and I can. So I'll talk about that in a moment. But when I am running it as a bicycle as a service, then what challenges companies like Yulu have faced? So first thing first,
Okay.
unlike very busy cities like Tokyo, where the average last mile is only 1 kilometer, they don't let any building to come if there's no metro. Uh, our last mile is almost 3.5 kilometers. Our first mile is almost 4.5 to 5 kilometers. And both of you are cyclists. You understand that what does it take for you to ride that level of distance, especially when you're going for work. And our workplaces are not equipped for shower. Our cities are still figuring out. There's a lot of dust. So you know the operational challenges. And we launched Yulu in 2018 January with bicycles. Huge excitement. People were very happy. Oh, click of a button, bicycle open, and you can take it anywhere. So we were very happy. We were jumping with joy. But after 2, 3 months, we started seeing drilling down on numbers while our numbers were growing. But when we drilled down on the number, we found two things. First of all, the user retention was not high. And then we ended up calling these guys. Why? He said, yeah, the distance is too much. But one more interesting thing was happening. Our numbers were growing. We're like, okay, what is happening here? And then clicking on the day graph, we found that the most of the usage was happening on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, and
Ah.
the usage was happening at 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. So people were using it for fitness and leisure rather than using it for commute. And we had to make a strategic choice. Are we a health and fitness company or a mobility company? So we chose, despite our number going up, we chose that no, we are not no, a fitness company. I think Cult is doing a better job. Let us focus on mobility. And then we also found one more thing, that because of the form factor, which is light and easy, there's a lot of breakage that happens when people use it in a service mode. There's a rough use. They will put it on a pothole. They will take it very fast on a speed breaker, etc. So you actually have to make the bike bulkier, and if
Hmm.
you make bike bulkier, it becomes even more difficult for you to paddle. So the conclusion we got to was that okay, you have to make first of all the bike bulkier so that it is not easy to break, and then for it to be written, you have to put a motor. So that's how Yulu Miracle was born, where we were very convinced and clear that we should not be doing those Activa scooters which other friends did. In India, almost 80% people don't have driving license, but the same number of people, a majority of the population knows how to ride a bicycle. So we ended up building a product which is as simple as bicycle, but it is robust and does not require so much of sweating. And that's how the Euro Miracle was born. And when we put it up after some deep research of 1 year, we found that there was a far better traction. And good news is people were using it for the intended use. So it was actually an office commuter or near mile commuter who started using Euro, and that's where we found our product market fit. So
Excellent.
answer to your question, yes, bicycle one can use if I have a good gear cycle, very lightweight, alloy frame. Then yeah, I can do 10 to 15 kilometers. That's what, by the way, I did for long. In my own Cannondale, I used to ride for 7 to 8 kilometers one way, and I was having fun. But when it comes to a 25 kilogram bicycle, or our case was 16 kilogram, even that was
Hmm.
not enough for the strength perspective. When we added some more kilogram, it became 20 kilogram plus. Customers basically said, I cannot ride it. So that became
Hmm.
kind of a no-go gate.
Makes a lot of sense. I think also maintenance costs of more moving parts, and if you have to build that in a different way. Once the brakes will go, then the pedal will go, the spokes will go. There are a lot of different points of failure that can happen. Maybe
Yeah.
there's a maturity that is not there, like you said. The last miles are too high now, and maybe if it comes down, that market could be something that is there. But
True.
this is interesting that you started in 2018. I do remember during COVID times, there was a lot of panic, and you guys had to literally clean your bikes every time before you gave it to people. How has that experience been, this whole COVID thing? I thought nobody will come back after that, but you guys are still there and strong. What did you do
Yeah.
differently from COVID? Was there, and I see a lot of delivery guys using a bike. Was that a conscious pivot or what happened there?
Good question once again, Satya. So I think COVID was a big gear change. in our journey. So first of all, when COVID happened, if you remember, each one of us was asked to stay at home. So business came to zero, and then people were allowed to go out. Everyone was very scared. And then what happened that while there was a lot of anxiety amongst the users that they should not get into buses, taxis, auto sharing, but they were all banned. But somehow, because in our vehicle it was a self-drive, government was okay letting the Euro service go. In fact, during COVID time also, we basically gave our bikes to a lot of Corona warriors. So there were people who were basically delivering essentially service. They were working for banks, hospitals, even police duty. So that set up a benchmark that YOLO is safe. And then to make things better, we basically introduced this sanitization process where there was a WHO approved spray which we were putting, and we were also making it transparent to show it to the consumer that it was sanitized X hours ago. So we actually added a lot of workforce who were just sanitized vehicle left, right, center. And because you were the only person and sanitized vehicle, the whole experience became very safe. And our numbers started growing. In fact, we were the only company in the mobility sector who came to pre-COVID number within 3 months. So despite many of us were sitting in our home, trying to prevent the spread of COVID, but there's a section of society which has to be traveling, and they were all traveling on. So it was a very transformational point in our journey, as I said. And the second thing, what happened, Satya, to your question on delivery guys, because a lot of people basically lost job. On the same time, we guys were sitting at home clicking a button to get our groceries, medicines, and food. So even Zomato, Swiggy, and these guys were facing a huge human power crunch. Most of these immigrant, they went to their hometown. So they needed people. People did not have bike. So we basically kind of became a godsend opportunity where we do not require any driving license and our bikes were out there. So we created a package where one can use Yulu by paying us a fixed daily rental. And if I'm not wrong, we started charging 120, 130 bucks per day. And we were like, anyway, these portion of bikes are sitting idle and there's a use case. Why don't we open it? So it was an interesting customer discovery phase for Euro where we found out. And I will not say pivoting, I would say it was customer customer segment addition. So we are still doing what we have been doing from day one, which is supporting or creating the mobility for the office goers or daily commuters. But on top of it, we basically have added a new customer segment, which is delivering goods using Euro. Uh, in fact, interestingly, for we also saw that how same bike was used for daily commuters and the delivery individuals, and it was creating a lot of issues for us from a brand perception perspective, from a supply availability perspective, because this guy who is delivering food, they will keep the bike with themselves, and I need to go to office and there's no Yulu because each one of them have sucked. So we found out that it is not going to be a good solution, and that's where we created a new product called Yulu Dex now, which is created for the last mile delivery only. So if you now see Bangalore, you will see blue color bikes. Typically, people are going for near mile commute, and the Dex bike are being used by the delivery individuals. And we have solved for the brand perception problem and supply availability problem with this approach.
Speaking of new products, Yulu has also launched a bike for personal purchase. So could you give us the rationale behind getting into personal vehicle sales?
So this is another interesting phenomena listening to the customers. And
Okay.
literally every month we get hundreds of emails that I really love this product. There's nothing comparable in the market, which is so easy and lightweight and things like that. In the past, we were like, okay, you take a Yulu, tell me your place, I will make a Yulu zone for you. Why you are bothered? But then there's still a section of society who is saying that, oh, I really want assuredness of, and for me, I can pay you 100 bucks per day, because if I don't have a Yulu, I have to spend many times more money on auto rickshaw or haggling with a taxi guy. So we found there's a section of society who's looking for a simpler product, and then women actually happen to be one of the very interesting target group for Yulu. Not only in India, the number says that the number of women who have a TL in India is below 5%. But many of them know how to ride a bicycle. Even Scooty and Honda Activa, which were created for a unisex phenomena, but even they are 100 kilogram plus. An average girl in India is 5.2 on a height perspective, and from a weight perspective, she is only 55 to 60 kilograms. And then you're trying to give a product which is so heavy, it's not a great product. And we thought that this Yulu actually fits it in that customer segment really well. Or teenager kids, they need to go to tuition, college, and right now they are bothering the parents that, oh, drop me there, pick me there. So while as a father, I think that, yeah, I need to be there doing my father duty, but I have several other things to do, and sometime my kid missing the classes or he's waiting for me at the tuition because I am stuck somewhere else. So this is also giving them a freedom to move, and these are again small distance. So when we have launched this personal mobility product, it is the same thesis of small vehicle for small distances for easy use cases. If someone needs to be on the road traveling 100 kilometers, no, this product is not for you. But if you are basically moving around in your neighborhood, doing your grocery, cafe, going to your shop, or going to some nearby places, this is a perfect product for you. So it's the same YOLO thesis, but rather than you paying us by minute or by day, you are saying, why don't I buy? And we also saw an interesting point that the charging and the range anxiety is the real issue for EV. So we have opened up our network of UMA stations. Earlier they were only used for UNO, but we are saying that okay, you can take battery as a service, which has helped us reducing the price of the product by almost 35-40%. And then they also basically are not worried about owning the battery or where do we charge, where do we sell. So we are kind of killing all of these issues with one go.
That's again, that comes back to my original question of, do you see this cannibalizing the shared services thing at all? At some point in time, would users then say, I'm convenient owning these things, I don't. Of course, it will not work if they need shared and they want to just drop it off near a public transport station and move somewhere. That might just not happen with your own vehicle, but you might just park it. Again, it comes back to your parking charges. Then there'll be a disincentive if you want to use the shared. Where again, it comes back to the same thing. Shared services will be under pressure from different angles. Do you see your let's say tomorrow your win, I think, right? So if that starts taking off, do you think you're gonna shared services will be under pressure for you? No.
No, I don't see it that way. I'll tell you our perspective. First of all, there's a reason for 85% of Indians do not having access to even a single vehicle. And this number will not change overnight. Point number one.
In urban areas, that might be in the villages,
This
no?
number may be a little bit more. I think Bangalore is an exception. We are very wealthy city. But look at the number of vehicles to population ratio in any top 10 city. You will know the answer. Look at Mumbai. Mumbai has 25 million people. Look at the number of vehicles that the city has. So, if it is not 15%, it may be 20, 25%. But the fact is, it will not change dramatically. Second thing is the most important use case for shared mobility, as I have mentioned, is the first mile, last mile. You actually do not have a vehicle when you are coming out of MG Road metro station. You need to go to your office or someplace. You don't have your vehicle. So this is not going in. Big cities, it is not going. And then the lack of parking space and the money you have to pay, you say, I'm better off ditching my vehicle. I will use a shared mobility and I'll move on. So I do not think it is actually cannibalizing anything to shared mobility or the public transportation. But there are use cases where your home to the grocery store, there is no metro going, unfortunately. Your kid going to a coaching, which is again next door, there's no, unfortunately, a feeder service or things like that. And we're trying to create a use cases around that. Very early days for us to have a strong point of view. But our thesis was developed just some of these people saying that I need a little bit more predictability on the availability of the vehicle and I'm willing to pay a premium for that. Otherwise, there's no need for me owning. So that the vision of everyone basically running mobility as a service, I think it is still far away. Like in America, they said, okay, everyone should move to Uber or self-driving car, etc. I think that vision is still away. People have their car, but when they have to go to airport or the office, the parking is challenged and things like that, they are using shared mobility service. So same thing will
Mm.
happen and play out in India as well. And
So
God knows
two
we
questions.
know how our our mission is that how do we move people more efficiently,
Fair enough.
uh, and more importantly, they use public transportation. So if they are basically not polluting the environment, not causing congestion on the city, I think our mission is achieved from our perspective.
I think that's a good goal. But so related to this, just two more questions before we wrap this up. One is due to or not due to correlated to the fact that the micromobility vehicles don't need driving licenses. You've seen a lot of abuse of that privilege by quite a few people. Added to that, the recent study done by one of them is that in the last few years, the RTO has been granting licenses willy nilly anyway. So, be that as it may, uh, there seems to be a lot of indiscipline among public, which is maybe there's a lack of education or lack of empathy or whatever it might be. Do you think micromobility vehicles without a license contributes to those? And I noticed recently you guys tried to do something about it. What are your views on this?
First thing, I think breaking of traffic rules is actually not just micromobility, is all vehicles. Look at the traffic challans and just because you see a vehicle in a color, it's easy for you to identify. But look at every vehicle type is trying to do the same thing. So I will not take that point that it's only micromobility vehicle who are not following the rule. It's actually across board. That's point number one. Having said that, you are right. If someone is on these non-motorized vehicles which are exempted for RTO registration, then this guy is basically can have an argument that okay, traffic police won't find me. So what we think that there's a goodness which this vehicle is providing in the form of an easy mobility. There's a responsibility for everyone who's on the road to follow traffic. In fact, I was very surprised to know that there's a traffic rule even for pedestrians. So in MG Road, Brigade Road, I was fined for jaywalking. I crossed a red light and I was fined. And for the first time, I got to know that even I don't have an RTO number on my on my on my on my hand, but someone can still fine me. So there's a larger need of creating an awareness that when you are on the road, you have to be worried about your safety and others' safety. And I think this is what we have been trying to do with traffic police in Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai, three places where we are present. We also basically have done some technology-led innovations where we have actually mapped every city in Bangalore with a one way. So if you're trying to go on a wrong way, my system is now starting to profile and it is actually giving you a warning. And with the if you're repeating it, we basically have a way to block these users, put penalty, and we are very supportive of everything, whatever is required. So the key point I'm basically making is just because you're riding a bicycle, forget YOLO. Even a bicycle, you ought to be following traffic rules. Otherwise, you're going to put someone else's life in danger. So it is not allowed. And as a company, we basically do not, encourage that. In fact, our app we put, legal warning that if you do that, you will be in trouble. But now we're also leveraging awareness with traffic police and also technology-led solution where we are trying to blacklist these users who are repeat offender.
The reason I ask is in the broader micromobility market, all these questions are going to come up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you're the only one still sticking around. And that brings me to that last question of saying you might be doing something right, but everybody else seem to have gotten into either selling vehicles or doing whatever else, and more vehicles are disappearing out. It may have been the ICE vehicles, they may have pivoted to a. It looks like Yulu is the only one forging a good path around micromobility, and you may have to save the day for a lot of them. But where do you again? Let's conclude with the same question we asked. True, last mile and public transport is going to save the cities, and micromobility is going to play a huge part. And I do hope at some point the cultural shift does happen that bicycles also become accepted, and any low carbon footprint form factor should be an option that we should. Some other things need to evolve for that to happen. Where do you see? What is the What is your Yulu's plans? Being the lone warrior who are out there, it looks like the entire market is open for you guys now. And how many cities are you in, and what is the plan? And do you really think there will be more people in the micro mobility market? Is it attractive enough? Is the unit economics good enough, or it's going to be sunken funding for even longer time? Where do you see that?
So many questions. I'll try to answer most of them. So first thing first, I think as forget Yulu, as a citizen of this beautiful city, I would like to have a privilege of ability to walk, bike, and then also ride if I have to based on the distance. So if I live next to metro station, let's say 1 kilometer, I should be walking. I should not be bothered with anything else. If it is 2 kilometer, why not? I should bike. It can be mine or it can be shared mobility, doesn't matter. It's just my economic ability or financial decision. And if it is little bit more than that, maybe a little bit electric version, which is also small footprint, I should be able to go there. So I'm a big believer that this is how the city should be shaping. And I'm not basically particularly advocating for micromobility. I'm actually advocating of easy accessibility, which includes walking also, which is the cheapest and the least carbon emitted form of commuting. Uh, and then not just the vehicle type which Yulu is supporting. I think I'm also a big fan of what's happening up in north. Uh, you know, easy vehicles which are taking multiple people around in a shared
Mm,
mode. So you
shared.
create those business models, those form factors where the drivers earns his or her money, the consumer is paying, which our country can afford as a GDP or per capita income, and city also not get killed in terms of congestion or environmental hazard. So I think some innovation is required, keeping customer safety, experience, and affordability in mind. And I think this is where some of the best brains should be working. In fact, if you ask me, Yulu, in 5 years, 10 years down the line, yeah, we are not talking about the vehicle what you're seeing. We will be keep on evolving across the three dimension. As I said,
Mm,
safety, convenience, and affordability. So this has to come together. Only then we can make a mass impact. As far as Yulu's footprint is concerned, we are currently present in Delhi, uh, Mumbai, and Bangalore. Next week, you will see us going live in Gurgaon. Next month, you should see us going live in Hyderabad. And sometime this year, we are hoping to add 3 or 4 more cities in our service list. So after we raised the funding back in September, and then we got our new third generation vehicles from Bajaj, we have accelerated our overall growth and fleet deployment. And I think by end of this year, Euro should be present in 7 to 8 cities very easily, with a very large footprint, solving the real use case. As far as profitability is concerned, we actually come from a very different point of view. Unlike many of our peers, we did not raise a lot of capital. In fact, before the last round, we only did 25-30 million dollars, and that too, most of the money was spent in buying these vehicles because no one was willing to give us debt, unproven business model. Uh, Having said that, we're also, by the way, operationally profitable since the time we started electric mobility. So good news is why we are able to still stand and tall and surviving because we are not burning money unlike many other startups. So we actually understood this very early in the game that this business model, if it is not generating margin, you will die because VCs will not keep on pouring. Sometimes the sector will become non-sexy, uncool. There will be some crypto or some Web3 or something which will be far more attractive to these VCs for the right reason, and we will not be the most hottest category. So we have to build business from strong fundamentals. In fact, that's also linked with my own journey. Um, I had very successful and very rewarding career and journey within Mobi. I didn't have to do anything for my rest of my life professionally, but I decided to choose Yuru or pick this problem because I thought that this problem requires a solution which works for every stakeholder. So when we entered along with my other co-founders, we entered with a decade plus expectation that this is a time you need to put in to actually fix this problem. So we're building a category. That's why we are here with strong conviction. We have done things which were not seemingly looking right, where other companies thought that a shortcut of petrol scooter probably will give them more business and right. We decided to invest into EV, where there was no scooter, no battery, no charging infrastructure, no funding. We took a harder path because we are here for long run. So and you will see during next couple of years, as I said, not only you will see far better products and services coming from Uru, but you'll also see a lot of innovation in terms of the way things are being set up. We have not shied away in going asking for help from Metro, for example. They gave us spaces for parking. Our city never had that. We never had charging stations. We basically have created one. So, from Lulu's perspective, we are not shy of working hard, asking for help, working with ecosystem providers to build this category. And I think with my belief is that ultimately the right thing will win.
Mm.
It's not just some artificially inflated some.
Yeah.
So whatever way you cut it, the need of mobility is real. We also understand that the thesis of public transportation is also real.
Mm.
You cannot magically fly people because people cannot afford it. So I think we are up there. Investment in metro in big cities, investment with electric buses in big cities. And I think if we are able to integrate, give infrastructure support and a little bit more support policy related to micro mobility service, let it be running by a lot of private players just in the thinking of an PCI or UPI, where there's a governance and SLAs being placed. I think we as a country will do reasonably well. And I see a very bright future of intra-city transportation with that kind of association.
Excellent. On that note, I don't know if it's the water in Bangalore. There are good people here trying to build reasonably nice things, taking the risk and doing these things. Uh, Thank you for coming on the show. I hope the next time we speak, you will be a full mobility operator and I don't have to speak only about the micro mobility sector. And we may be, and hopefully by then, some amount of whether it is common mobility card, ONDC, whatever it is, some amount of integration eases this process and we stop talking about last mile
Yeah,
because the only talk is the last mile now. At some point, we'll say we have solved the problem. I asked this guy, Felipe Ramirez, who was here on the BRT, asked him which, I mean, we could have asked him a lot of questions about BRT. I just asked him, have you solved the last mile? He's from Bogota and they are the
yeah,
pioneers in bus rapid transit. And for a minute, he said, no, I don't think other than Amsterdam, any of us have solved the last mile problem. I mean, completely. I mean, you solved some parts of it.
yeah.
Everybody suddenly looked at him and said, really? I said, yeah, it is a complicated issue. It's not straightforward. It's not like we can reach you at your home. There was one question about the zero last mile, but we'll save it for later. There is no zero last mile. It's going to end somewhere. You got to walk to some place and pick this up. Uh, but let's see the business model and all that. But it's good. Good luck to you guys. And thanks for coming on the show.
No, thank you, Satya, and you also have been a part of the same clan, and I think your vision and mission is similar to ours. You have been holding the float of a flag of sustainable movement. Very thankful to you
Yeah.
uh, for your efforts in making our cities better. And thank you and good luck for your this new podcast. Very
Yeah,
fascinated to
sure.
see you putting this effort and kind of collecting this whole thing together. Hopefully, it will inspire some policy makers and some decision makers and sitting in some circuit what is the right thing to do. So, very thankful for you once again. Thank you,
Yeah.
Neerav,
We are
for
all
being
holding
part.
this, we are all holding different parts of the same elephant, approaching it at different ways and different angles. Hopefully, we'll all figure out it's an elephant and not a donkey at the end of it, and we can fix these issues. And let's see. Thanks again. Thanks once again.
Okay,
Viewers, see you all next week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and check out the website podcast.urulabs.com. Bye bye. See you all next week.
take care, guys.